Hey, it's Matthew Todd again, and welcome to the next lesson. In this lesson, I want to start by defining TDD. What do we mean by test-driven development? It's a practice that's been around for many years, so as a group of software development professionals, you think we could agree on exactly what this meant. But that's not necessarily the case. So, what is TDD again? Well, for fun, I thought I'd Google it. The first link that Google came back with was from Wikipedia, and Wikipedia says, test-driven development, TDD, is a software development process that relies on the repetition of a very short development cycle. Requirements are turned into very specific test cases. Now, I'm not entirely sure I agree with this. To me, this makes it sound like we've got a set of requirements, we've got some features we need to implement, and we do a whole bunch of work turning this set of requirements into a big set of test cases. And now we have this big set of test cases, we then work very hard, doing the actual implementation, to make all these test cases pass, to satisfy all the conditions in these test cases. Now to me, this sounds like a very coarse-grained approach, and I don't find this works too well. I think taking an approach like this, you're trying to hold too much in your head at once. And I have seen people attempt a very high-level approach to test-driven development, where they do start with a set of requirements, a set of features, do a whole bunch of analysis to turn this requirement set into a whole set of test cases, and then they try and make all of these test cases pass, or in some cases they don't even get around to all of the test cases. Now, many people mistakenly think that this is a way to get a quick win, to get the most value for your test effort, but I've never ever seen this practice work very well. Okay, so if it's not that, then what's the next result in Google? Perhaps this gives us a better definition. The next definition that Google gives us is test-driven development, TDD, also called test-driven design, is a method of software development which unit testing is repeatedly done on source code. Now, I'm afraid I must still disagree with this definition. If TDD is simply unit testing repeatedly done on source code, then I can just sit here with my IDE open, running my unit tests, running more tests, and that's clearly not TDD. That's just running tests. Now, this definition also refers to test-driven design. Now, this is something that not everyone would agree about, but I don't believe that taking a test-driven approach causes design to somehow miraculously emerge. I believe that when we approach an implementation, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, we always have a design in our mind. Maybe there are some existing design patterns in our code base, maybe it's just down to our design experience in the past, but I don't believe that taking a test-driven approach somehow allows our design to emerge automatically. Now, I'm not saying that tests don't validate our design. I think they can do that and can do that very well. They can certainly tell us when we've got a system that's hard to test or perhaps isn't working the way we expected. But again, I don't think the tests are driving the design. I think the tests are just validating the design that you've already got. So, if not this definition, then what is a workable definition? Well, for me, TDD is about a test-first approach, so we're writing the tests before the application code. And by tests, normally mean unit tests, not always the case, but typically the bulk of the tests will be unit tests. And I'm aiming for as small an iteration as possible. So I'm aiming for a very small amount of test work, small amount of implementation, small amount of test, small implementation, so on and so forth, until we've implemented all of the features that we need for the set of requirements that we've got. TDD is often described as a red-green refactor cycle, where red is the failing test, and for me this is a very small amount of failing test code, the smallest amount of test code that is useful to us. Then green is the application code that makes this test pass, so the test has gone from failing red to passing green, and then refactor, which is where we're looking to improve either the application or test code, but keeping the tests the same, so making sure that the tests all pass basically. So if we look at that cycle, then red, this is where our test development happened. This is where we're creating our test, deciding what we're testing and writing the test for it. Green is where we're writing the application code. And refactor is where we're thinking about our application design a bit more. Now, as I mentioned before, I don't believe that the testing drives the design per se. I think you should always aim for the simplest design possible when writing the initial application code to make the test pass. But at this stage, when you've got the test there to give you confidence in your code, it gives you an opportunity to revisit the design and improve the design if you need to. And what this practice allows, if we're aiming for very, very small iterations, is that, let's say I'm distracted by another meeting, colleague, phone call, etc. I'm either left in a position where I've got a very, very small specific failing test that I need to make pass, or I know that I've implemented all the code so far to make the current test pass, so the next step for me is to implement the next test that's going to build up until I've got all the way to my desired feature. I've met my requirements. So that's it for this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson, where I'll show you a demonstration of what performing TDD in a relatively purist way would actually look like.